Someone once asked me what I would change if I could go back to being 20. I stayed quiet for a long time. Then I looked over at the bookshop right next to my flower shop. The brown wooden sign was still there. The bronze bell on the door still swayed in the wind. The smell of new paper and coffee still drifted through the half-open window. Only one thing had changed. The person who used to stand behind the counter, smiling at me every morning, was gone. I set a bouquet of white peonies down on the step between the two shops. This was the 317th bouquet. I had never missed a single day. Not in the rain. Not in the snow. Not even on the days I no longer knew what I was waiting for. If a customer ever asked why there was always a bouquet outside the flower shop that wasn't for sale, I would just smile. Because it belongs to the man who opened the bookshop. They usually assumed he was traveling, on a business trip, or that he'd moved to another city. Only I knew. Tanner Walker had never really left this place. He still lived in every book lined neatly on the shelves. In the coffee mug with the crack still in its handle. In the little chalkboard sign that read, "Read a little slower. Some stories deserve to be loved the way you'd love a person." That was Tanner's handwriting. I could pick it out from a million others, because I had held that hand for 8 years, had laced my fingers through his under the lecture hall desk, had kissed the owner of that hand in the first apartment we rented together after graduation, had stayed up with him through countless nights, turning one reckless dream into something real. A flower shop, a bookshop, 2 doors, side by side, one shared life, and a promise that, no matter what happens later, every morning I'll still bring you a flower. I had kept that promise. But Tanner was no longer here to receive it. If you walked into the small town of Ashford, Oregon today, you'd find 2 shops sitting side by side on the corner of Maple Street. Tourists often take photos in front of the 2 glass windows. They say the place looks like something out of a romance film. No one knows that it all began with a silly bet back in college. 11 years ago, when I had just turned 20, I hated flowers, and Tanner hated reading. Funny, isn't it? One of us would go on to open a flower shop, the other a bookshop. Both of us once hated the very thing that would change our lives. On the first day of the semester, the whole campus was packed with students. Music blared from the main square. Clubs competed to hand out flyers. Food trucks lined up in a long row. I dragged my old suitcase through the crowd, checking a map on my phone, trying to find my dorm. My biggest mistake that day was texting while walking. I crashed straight into someone. An iced coffee flew into the air, then spilled all over the front of a white shirt. "I'm so sorry." I looked up. The first thing I saw wasn't his face. It was a book. He was holding it tightly, as if it mattered more than the shirt I just ruined. "I'm really sorry." Only then did he look at me. Grayish-blue eyes, slightly messy dark brown hair, a faint dimple when he smiled. "It's fine," he said. "At least the coffee didn't spill on the book." I laughed. "You care about the book more than your shirt?" "Yeah. If I were you, I'd be upset about the shirt. I can buy a new shirt." He held up the novel. "But this one's signed by the author." That was the first thing Tanner ever said to me. Strange enough that I never forgot it. "I'm Mitchell." I held out my hand. He shook it. "Tanner." His hand was very warm. Warm enough that I had no idea years later that same hand would become the only place I ever felt I belonged. Back then, I never imagined the guy standing in front of me would be the one who taught me to love watching flowers bloom each morning. Never imagined I would spend my whole youth loving a guy who liked the smell of old paper more than any expensive perfume in the world. Tanner just smiled, picked up the crumpled paper cup off the ground, and said something I wouldn't fully understand until much later. "Some meetings seem like accidents, but they're really just the opening of a very long chapter. And the longest chapter of my life began right there." After apologizing again, I insisted on dragging Tanner to the cafe near the square to buy him a new drink. "You really don't have to." "I have to." "Why?" "Because I'm the one who spilled it." Tanner looked at me for a few seconds, then laughed. "Fine." That was the first time I saw that smile. Not too bright, not showy, just enough for the corners of his eyes to curve slightly, as if he was more used to smiling softly than laughing out loud. The cafe was packed with freshmen. We had to stand in line for almost 15 minutes. Tanner. What are you majoring in? Literature. I blinked. Really? Why? I just figured not many people pick that major anymore. True enough. I'm majoring in business. That sounds a very Tanner. I laughed. What do you mean? You look like the type who'll be wearing a suit to work by junior year. What about you? Mitchell looked down at his coffee-stained shirt. I'm majoring in landscape design. Landscape design? Flowers, plants, green spaces. That kind of thing. Never heard of it. You will. I rested my chin on my hand. I'm not so sure. Why? Because I have zero interest in flowers. Mitchell didn't argue. He just nodded. That's fine. Flowers don't need everyone to like them. The answer caught me off guard. I was used to people who tried to convince others to love what they loved. Mitchell was different. He just smiled, as if every preference deserved respect. The first weeks of college went by faster than I expected. The schedule was packed. Assignments piled up. Clubs kept recruiting new members. I nearly forgot about the guy with the grayish-blue eyes, until one Friday afternoon. Our communication skills professor announced a midterm project. You'll be working in pairs. The whole class started murmuring. I'll assign the pairs randomly. I silently hoped I wouldn't get stuck with someone lazy. The professor read down the list. Tanner Walker. I stood up. And Mitchell Carter. I turned around. In the row behind me, Mitchell had just looked up too. Our eyes met. He smiled like this was the most natural thing in the world. After class, Mitchell walked over. Hey, partner. Hey. Free this weekend? Depends. Library tomorrow morning? Sure. 9 o'clock. Don't be late. Mitchell smiled. I'm never late. I'll remember you said that. The next morning, I got to the library at 8:50. Mitchell was already sitting there. Not only early, he'd also brought 2 coffees. 1 Americano. He slid it over to me. I was surprised. You remembered? You ordered it the other day. Good memory. Mitchell shrugged. I remember the things I find interesting. I pretended not to notice, but something inside me felt strangely pleased. We worked well together for 3 straight hours. I was good at planning. Mitchell was good at turning dry ideas into vivid presentations. By noon, I stretched my shoulders. Let's break for food. Sure. Mitchell packed up his laptop. But before that, come with me for a bit. Where? The greenhouse. I laughed. Flowers again? Yeah. I told you. I'm not into it. Mitchell tilted his head. Try one more time. Why? If you still hate it after today, I won't ask again. That confident? No. Mitchell smiled faintly. I just believe in flowers. The art department's greenhouse sat behind the biology research building. The moment the door opened, a gentle wave of fragrance wrapped around us. Not overpowering, not sharp, just pleasant. I looked around. Hundreds of flowers in every color stretched out beneath the glass roof. Sunlight streamed through the panes, forming soft strips of light. Mitchell walked slowly, as if he were walking through his own home. He stopped in front of a pot of purple flowers. This is lavender. I know that one. And this? No idea. Hydrangea. Oh. And this? Still no idea. Mitchell laughed. Tanner. You know the most interesting thing about flowers? What? Every kind blooms at exactly the right time for it. Meaning, some bloom very early. Some wait until late summer. Some take years before they flower at all. Mitchell gently stroked a leaf. People are the same way. Why so philosophical all of a sudden? No reason. He turned to look at me. I just think. No one should be judged just because they bloom later than everyone else. I stood still for a moment. Growing up, I had always been compared to others. Grades, achievements, internships. jobs. For the first time, someone had told me, it's okay to arrive late. I didn't know why, but that sentence made my throat tighten. I quickly changed the subject. Do you really remember the name of every flower? Yeah. How many kinds? Over 300, probably. That's insane. Mitchell burst out laughing. Tanner. What? You just complimented me in the strangest way possible. I laughed along with him. At the time, I still thought Mitchell was just an interesting friend. I had no idea. I had already started wanting to see him more than anyone else on campus. And even less idea that, in another corner of the greenhouse, a teaching assistant was watching the two of us with a smile, whispering to the professor. Those two look just like a couple. The professor only smiled kindly. There are seeds like that. Given enough time, they'll know how to bloom on their own. I never used to believe in things like fate. If you'd asked sophomore year Tanner Walker what he thought about love, I would have told you right away that it was a luxury. My parents divorced when I was 14. I'd watched too many promises get swallowed up by time. Because of that, I always kept my distance from relationships. Friends, yes. Partner, no. At least that was the plan. Until Mitchell showed up. After that day at the greenhouse, we basically became friends. Not the clingy kind. The kind where all it took was a single text. Where are you right now? And the other would answer honestly. No need to dance around it. If I was at the library, Mitchell would bring coffee. If Mitchell was at the greenhouse, I'd drop by on my way somewhere, even with no real reason to. We slowly built little habits. Breakfast together on Mondays. Study group on Wednesdays. Movies in the student hall on Fridays. Grocery runs on weekends, since we both lived in the dorms and both hated the cafeteria food. Everything happened so naturally that I didn't realize it had become part of my life. One night in late October, we sat in the library until almost 11. Mitchell closed his laptop.
I'm starving.
Same. Pizza? I'm in. The pizza place near campus was still open. We ordered a large one and sat by the window. Outside, it had started to rain. Mitchell rested his chin on his hand, watching people hurry along the sidewalk. Tanner. Are you afraid of being alone? I looked up. Why the sudden question? Just answer. I thought about it for a moment. When I was younger, yeah. Now, I think I got used to it. Mitchell went quiet. What about you? He smiled faintly.
I'm afraid.
I thought you liked being alone. That's different. Mitchell broke off a piece of pizza. Being alone is a choice. Loneliness is a feeling. I looked at him for a long moment. For the first time, I saw a sadness in Mitchell's eyes that was hard to name. My parents ran a flower shop when I was a kid, Mitchell said slowly. They were always busy. I grew up surrounded by thousands of flowers. But I ate dinner alone most nights. I didn't know how to respond. I just quietly slid my glass of water toward him. Mitchell laughed. You comfort people in the strangest way. I'm not good with words. I know. But you always show up. In early November, the school held its autumn festival. The whole campus was strung with yellow lights. Food stalls everywhere. Live music. Even a corner selling used books and handmade crafts. Mitchell pulled me along early in the day. What do you want to see first? Whatever. That's such a boring answer.
I'm easygoing. No.
Mitchell shook his head. You just rarely say what you actually want. I paused. He was right. I always asked other people what they wanted, then went along with it. Rarely chose for myself. Mitchell pointed toward the bookstall. Let's go. You like books?
Ido.
Since when? Since I was a kid. I figured someone studying plants would only read about plants. Mitchell laughed. I read a lot more novels. He picked up an old book and turned the pages carefully. I like this feeling. What feeling? Every book once belonged to someone. Maybe they cried over it. Maybe they laughed. Maybe they folded down a page. Maybe they wrote notes in the margins. Mitchell handed the book to me. A story never belongs only to its author. Then he pointed to a handwritten line on the first page. I hope this book makes you feel a little less alone. No name, no date, just one short line. And yet, something in my chest softened. I'm buying it, Mitchell said. Just because of that line? Yeah. Tanner. Sometimes the most valuable thing isn't the book itself. It's the person who once loved it. I laughed. You're too romantic. Am I? Yeah. Mitchell scratched his head. I thought that was normal. When it got dark, the main stage started an acoustic set. Students crowded in. Mitchell and I sat on the grass a little further back, among hundreds of people, no one paying attention to anyone else. One couple sat wrapped in each other's arms. Another held hands. Someone kissed right under the string lights. Mitchell glanced at me. Tanner. Have you ever been in love? I shook my head.
No.
What about you? Mitchell shook his head too.
No.
Ever liked someone, then? He didn't answer right away. A few seconds later, he laughed. I think. Maybe. My heart skipped. Someone from school? Yeah. Same major?
No.
Do I know them? Mitchell turned to look at me. The yellow light reflected in his grayish-blue eyes. There was something strange in that look. Warm, gentle, and it made me hold my breath without meaning to. You probably do, he answered. I was about to ask more. Right then, the MC on stage shouted. Next up, a game for couples. Cheers rang out across the square. Mitchell laughed. Lucky timing. Lucky how? I wasn't brave enough yet. Brave enough for what? He stood up. Want to get ice cream? We were in the middle of something. Some other time. Mitchell smiled and walked ahead of me. I watched his tall, lean back disappear into the crowd. I don't know why, but an uncomfortable feeling suddenly rose in my chest. I didn't know who Mitchell liked, but just the thought that someday he'd hold someone else's hand, smile at someone else, tell someone else his stories about flowers, made something in my chest tighten. At the time, I told myself, it was only because we were close friends. Just friends. I had no idea that jealousy always arrives before you're willing to admit anything. There's something strange about people. We often only realize how much someone matters to us once a third person enters the picture. It was the same for me. A week after the autumn festival, Mitchell texted me. Mitchell, can't make it to the library today. I replied almost instantly. Me, busy. 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Mitchell. Yeah. Someone asked me to dinner. I stared at the screen. Someone. Just one ordinary word. And yet something inside me went hollow. I started typing have fun. Then deleted it. Thought about asking who. Felt strange about it. In the end, I just sent a thumbs up. Mitchell only sent back a smiley face. The conversation ended there. That night, I didn't absorb a single word of studying. The book in front of me had been stuck on page 17 for nearly an hour. Lucas, my roommate, walked in. What's wrong with you? Ha! You look like you just failed to get a scholarship. I'm fine. Lucas glanced at my laptop screen, then at me. Tanner. What? Do you like someone? I laughed. You're crazy. You've never zoned out like this before. I'm just tired. Lucas sat down on the edge of the bed. Let me guess. A girl.
No.
Same class.
No.
Same dorm.
No.
Same. I said no. Lucas shrugged. Fine. Just tell me whenever you figure it out. I frowned. Figure out what? That you're jealous. I shot back immediately. I'm not jealous. Lucas just smiled. If you're not jealous, then stop checking your phone. I looked down. My phone was still in my hand. I sighed. Damn it. 2 days later, Mitchell finally showed up at the greenhouse. I tried to act normal. How was the dinner? Mitchell was trimming stems when he paused. It was fine. Good. You're not going to ask who it was? Should I? I figured you'd be curious. I'm not one to pry. Mitchell looked at me for a few seconds. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly. Tanner. What? You're mad. I'm not. You are. I'm not. You are. I set the vase down a little too hard. I said I'm not. Mitchell stayed quiet. A few seconds later, he burst out laughing. What's so funny? I've never seen you act this childish.
I'm 20.
Exactly, that's childish. I crossed my arms. So who did you go with in the end? Mitchell tilted his head. You really want to know? It was my mom. I froze. Your mom? Yeah. She was visiting. I took her to dinner. I stood there, completely still. Mitchell watched my face, then laughed so hard he had to lean on the table for support. Tanner, you just sighed in relief, didn't you? I did not. You did. You did. I turned away. My ears burned. Mitchell stepped closer. The distance between us was less than an arm's length now. You thought I was on a date.
No.
Yes. You were jealous. I was not. Mitchell smiled softly. Fine. If you say it's not, then it's not. Somehow that answer only made me more annoyed. That afternoon, we worked in the greenhouse together, tending to the plants. Neither of us brought up what had happened. By the time we were almost done, Mitchell suddenly handed me a small potted plant. Take it. What is it? Succulent. For me? Yeah. Just like that. Mitchell sat down beside me. Know why I picked this one?
No.
Succulents don't need much watering.
I'm lazy.
Exactly. I laughed. Thanks. Mitchell looked at the little plant for a moment. Actually, it means something too. What? Some people say, the more patiently you care for it, the longer it lives. I looked at him. Like love. Mitchell froze for a second, then nodded slightly. Maybe. The air between us went unusually quiet. I didn't know whether to look at the plant or at Mitchell. In the end, I chose Mitchell. The late afternoon light fell across his face. Beautiful enough that I suddenly thought, if someone ever fell in love with Mitchell, they would be very lucky. The thought had barely formed, when my heart ached again. That weekend, Lucas dragged me to a department party. Tanner, I don't want to go. Come on. Why? Because you need to get out more. I do get out.
No.
You only go between the dorm, the library, and the greenhouse. You live like an old man. I reluctantly agreed. The party was at a house near campus. The music was loud. Lights of every color. Everyone dancing and talking at once. I just wanted to leave. I was about to sneak out when a girl approached.
I'm Emily.
Tanner. Want to dance? Before I could answer, a familiar voice spoke up behind me. Excuse me. I need to borrow Tanner for a second. I turned around. Mitchell. He was wearing a cream-colored sweater, his hair a little windblown, that same gentle smile as always. Emily looked between the two of us, then smiled. Sure thing. She walked off. I was stunned. What are you doing here? Lucas texted me. What? He said you were about to get dragged into dancing. I couldn't help but laugh. That traitor. Mitchell laughed too. Let's go. Go where? Outside. We left the party. Neither of us said anything until we were standing in the quiet parking lot. The air was freezing. Mitchell handed me a cup of hot chocolate. When did you buy this? On the way here. You knew you'd come with me? Mitchell looked straight into my eyes. Not at first. But I was hoping. My heart pounded. This time, I could no longer convince myself that I only saw Mitchell as a friend. And it seemed that the same gentle look he gave me was hiding the exact same secret. We didn't go back to the party. Mitchell suggested we walk around campus instead. I agreed right away, even though it was cold enough that our breath turned to white mist. That night, campus was almost empty. Rows of yellow lights spilled across the brick path. Red maple leaves covered both sides of the walkway, crunching softly under every step. Doesn't it feel too quiet? I asked. Mitchell smiled. I like it. Me too. A moment later, he turned to look at me. Actually, I wasn't planning on going to that party tonight. Then why did you come? Mitchell was quiet for a second. Because Lucas called. I know.
No.
Mitchell shook his head. He didn't just text. He called. And said. He took a deep breath. If you keep hesitating, someone else is going to steal Tanner away. I stopped walking. Lucas said that? Yeah. That lunatic. Mitchell laughed. I thought so too. But you still came. Yeah. Why? Mitchell didn't answer right away. Instead, he bent down and picked up a red maple leaf that had just fallen. He turned it over in his hand, as if searching for the exact right words. Finally, he said very quietly, because I couldn't stand the thought of seeing you hold someone else's hand. Something in my chest tightened like a fist. Not from surprise, but because I realized that was exactly what I had been feeling these past few days too. We stood facing each other. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us smiled. Only the wind moved through the trees. Tanner. Have you ever? Mitchell stopped. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Hypothetically. Just say it's hypothetical. If a guy liked another guy, would you think that was strange? I looked straight into Mitchell's eyes. Those grayish-blue eyes had lost their usual calm. There was worry in them, nervousness, and a fear of being rejected. I understood right away. Mitchell wasn't asking about someone else. He was asking about himself. And about me. I swallowed. A while ago, I used to think it would be strange. Mitchell lowered his head slightly. And now, I took a step closer. Now I think, if someone makes you want to smile more, makes you look forward to seeing them every morning, makes you miss them after just a few hours apart, makes you jealous for no reason at all, then, I don't care anymore whether that person is a boy or a girl. Mitchell slowly lifted his head. His eyes were red. You? Tanner. Do you mean? I smiled. I mean, I'm just as confused as you are. Mitchell let out a long breath, then suddenly burst out laughing. What's so funny? I was so nervous just now. I thought my heart was going to jump right out of my chest. Same here. For the first time, we laughed together over the same fear. Mitchell sat down on the wooden bench by the pond. I sat beside him. The space between us was only a few centimeters now. You know, Mitchell looked out at the water. I liked you since the coffee spilled on your shirt. I turned sharply. What? I thought you were furious back then. I was. Mitchell nodded. But after you insisted on buying me a new drink, I thought you were really kind. I laughed. That's it.
No.
What else? You always remember what you say.
Ido.
Yeah. You said you'd stop by the greenhouse. You did. You said you'd help me with my presentation. You actually did. You said if I ever needed help moving a big pot, just call. You showed up for that too. Mitchell looked at me with such tenderness. Tanner, you don't make many promises, but you always keep the ones you make. I like that about you. I stayed quiet for a long moment, then smiled faintly. As for me, I liked you from the moment you cared more about that book than your shirt. Mitchell looked surprised. Really? Yeah. Why? I figured. Someone who knows how to cherish a book probably knows how to cherish a person too. Mitchell laughed, ducking his head. His ears turned red. The way you talk is really sweet. No one's ever said that to me before. Well, now someone has. The night wind picked up. Mitchell shivered slightly. I took off my scarf and handed it to him. Here, wear this. What about you? I'm not cold. You're lying. I'm tough. Mitchell looked at the scarf for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, wrapped it around both our necks. The scarf was just long enough to bridge the space between us. This way, neither of us is cold. I laughed out loud. You're a genius.
No.
Mitchell laughed too. I just didn't want to give it back. We walked slowly toward the dorms. Our shoulders brushed now and then. Neither of us pulled away. At the door of my building, Mitchell stopped. Tanner. I still haven't asked. Asked what? You. Would you like to try being with me? Not a flowery confession.
No fireworks.
No cheering crowd. Just a very sincere question. From a guy standing in the cold of the night. I looked at him, then smiled. Mitchell. I think. I already said yes the moment you brought that hot chocolate to the parking lot. Mitchell blinked, stunned for 2 seconds, then burst into laughter. The sound rang out across the quiet campus. Warmer than any scarf could ever be. He held out his hand toward me. No pressure.
No rush.
Just gently waiting. For the first time in my life. I was the one who reached out and took a guy's hand first. Mitchell's hand was still as warm as it had been the day we met. But this time, I knew I never wanted to let go. And that was how, on one quiet late autumn night of our sophomore year, Mitchell Carter became my boyfriend, and I, Tanner Walker, finally understood that love doesn't always arrive in loud, dramatic moments. Sometimes it comes very quietly, like a flower blooming in silence, until the day you look up and realize the whole garden has already filled with color, without you ever noticing when it happened.